Well, hello again, paper crafters. Thanks so much for joining us here at PaperCrafter's Corner, where we are all about information, inspiration, and entertainment for paper crafters around the globe. Hopefully you've got a chance to see part 1 of our product review on the Brothers ScanNCut machine, and if not, then I suggest you take a look down there in the show notes and find the link and go and check that video out first, because this video will make a lot more sense if you've already watched that one. Now, if you're very familiar with the Brothers ScanNCut machine, you may not need to do that. But if you've not yet watched that, then I would highly suggest you go back and take a look at that. And we walk through everything from the moment you open a box and get the machine out, to setting it up, to all the functions of the machine, how the different functions work, and then even up to the maintenance and additional projects that you can make with the machine. So hopefully you get a chance to look at that, and then you can come right back here and join us. And for those of you who've already seen part 1, let's get right on to part number 2. So before we start the machine, I want to show you a few projects that I worked on earlier today, just to see what was possible. And again, the more you play with the machine, the more you understand how it works, and the more you can fine-tune what it is you want it to scan and cut. And so I'm still learning. Again, this is the first day out of the box, and once I've had a chance to go back and play with it a little bit more, I'm sure we'll have a lot more little tips and tricks and tutorials to share with you in the future. But for right now, let's get back to pretty much the basic functions of the machine and the types of things we might be able to do with that. Okay, so first of all, you'll see I've got this whole stack here, and we're going to start with the very first item. So this is a Simple Stories paper pad. It's a 6x6 paper pad called Summer Fresh, and what I really like about their line is that everything is color coordinated, and it's really made to make your scrapbooking and all types of paper crafting very, very easy. If you are someone who does Project Life, or you're using their snap binder system, these are great paper pads. And they've got these little strips and borders and cards and things you can put into pockets, but then they've also got small scale prints for most of their papers as well. So it's just a really nice paper company. I really enjoy using their paper pads, and I wanted to try to use one of those in our project today. Now, one thing I want to point out is that papers like this, which I attempted to cut out, are a little bit challenging for the scanner, and that's because this background does not have a lot of contrast to the items next to it. There's just not a huge contrast here. Perhaps if you took a thick black line and went along the edge here and then scanned it in, it would pick that up as a cut line. However, when I scanned this in and it scanned in perfectly, but when I went to cut it, the machine told me that it couldn't cut because it couldn't pick up an image. So again, that's because there's a very low contrast between this background and then this here. And again, you could solve that by putting a dark black line along both of these edges, and then it would recognize and cut that out, and you get a nice cut. So one thing I wanted to try was to cut out different elements from the papers. And so we were able to cut out this little banner from there very easily. We were able to cut this little scallop frame out of there very easily, and so now you've got this nice little opening here, and you can either use this on a page, maybe a photo behind it or journal in it, or you could use it as a stencil, and then also you could use this for a journaling block. So really fun things that you can do with products you may already have. And then this morning I tried a little bit different project, and I had this cute paper, and I thought, you know, we could certainly cut this out and cut something out of it, cut a shape out of it, or we could, with this one, we could go in and cut the letters out of it, which I did. So as you can see, I was able to cut these letters out very easily, and now I can use this page as is, or I can cut this little card out and use that as well. And I wanted to show you on this paper here, this would make a great background for a 6x6 album, but you could also cut things out of this. And the test project that I did on this was, oh, we're losing our letters here, was to go in and cut out the word hello. And so as you can see, it was able to easily cut those letters out. And then you've got all the letters to use, and you also have this as something you could put a photo or a piece of solid color back cardstock behind, or you could use this as a stencil. So that's one of the projects we're going to do today. We're going to cut letters out of this type of paper, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. So that's project number 1. Let's put these aside. Another thing that you could do is you could go in and use your stamped images and cut them out. So this is a cute little set from Little Yellow Bicycle, and we've got these large words, happy, friends, and dream. And dream is mostly a script font, and it's like cursive handwriting, but there's a couple breaks in it. So there's a break between the E and the A, and there's a break between the R and the E. And what happens when you go to cut that is that it will cut the letters out, just as it did here. And again, let's take a look at how nicely it cut those out. But because those letters are not connected, you're going to get separate letters in the final project, right? So these are how the letters came out. And again, it did a really nice job of cutting them. They're just separate pieces because the letters were not completely welded together. And this machine can weld letters, so that's something else you could do. You could even handwrite your own lettering, and then you could weld those letters together and get it to cut it out in one piece. So that's project number 2. We're going to cut this out, and I'm going to show you how that works. And then the next project is that I wanted to hand draw some images. So I drew this heart with the word love in it, and I made a little squirrel there, and I went out of the line a little bit there, and I wanted to see how the machine would do with that. And what you're going to see is that it did a great job cutting right around that heart and leaving me with this stencil, and then it cut this beautifully. So if you take a look at what it did here, it even picked up these little blips and put a nice border around them. In the case of this one, I added a border to the image when I cut it out. And it did a beautiful job of cutting it nice and evenly. So that is going to be our next project that we'll cut out. And then I wanted to see how it would do cutting not just around an image, but also inside of an image. And so we're going to do a project with this today as well. And I'm going to do one where there's points that are not connected, and just so I can show you what would happen in that case. And to show you how finely this machine can detect detail and lines, again, this is just using a Sharpie marker. I was able to draw all these stars, have it cut the outside and the insides of them, and what I ended up with is this really detailed little star. And I don't know how clear this is to you, but I'm going to hold it up to one of our cameras here. A very, very fine line, and it did an amazing job cutting it out. So you can take that and use it as an embellishment, or place it on a picture would be kind of cute. But again, this is just something I freehand drew. So if you're a doodler, if you're somebody who likes to draw images and you'd like to try your hand at this and then be able to duplicate them either with using the pen or the blade or both in the machine, it's definitely doable, and the machine does a very nice job. So that's our next project. And then this type of a paper, a lot of times we have scrapbook paper that has lots of little images, and trying to get in here with a pair of scissors and cut this out nicely really is tough. So you could feed something like this in, scan it in, and then put your bounding boxes around the item you're interested in cutting out, and then it would scan it in, and then it would cut it. Now in this case, this is a die cut page. It's already got the items cut out of it, but I just wanted to show you as an example that if you have a page that has lots of little images or maybe letters or numbers or circles, whatever it might be, you can select certain ones and you can have the machine recognize it and then cut them out. The next project that I worked on was I took this feather paper, and this was out of just a paper pad that I had in my stash. And I wanted to see, when you've got lots of images like this and I wanted to just cut a couple of them out, how would that work, right? And so what I did with that one is I put this in, I put the bounding box around here, and then I was able to get these very finely detail cut little feathers, and it cut them out perfectly. It went right along the edges and cut them out just beautifully. So they would be a great little embellishment for a project. And I just wanted to show you that it is possible, even when you've got real small images, to pick specific ones by putting a bounding box around it and then selecting what type of cut you want. And then finally, we have this paper, and I'm sure all of us have at least 1 or 2 scrapbooking pads where we had specific pages out of it that we liked, and maybe we've got some pages like this left that we're not really sure how to use. Some of us don't use real big bold patterns, and I really liked this. I just couldn't figure out what I was going to do with it. And I thought, you know, let me see if the machine can cut this out well. So I had a choice. I could have had it cut around this whole flower and take that out and also cut the insides, or I could just cut the insides. And in this case I thought, let me try just cutting the insides and see what we're left with. And as you can see, I cut out all the little pieces very cleanly, and then we have those. We could build a flower just like this one, but it left this beautiful empty stencil here. And again, you could put a photo behind here, you could put another piece of cardstock behind here, or you could even, you know, use this as a stencil, or maybe even just put it, you know, against some white background paper and have it show through that way. And that might be a really neat, and then you could put some embellishments or journaling in here, or maybe little photos. So I just wanted to show you that that's another thing that the machine is capable of doing, and we're going to go ahead and cut one of these out on camera so that you can see how that is done and just how very simple it is to do. So let's put our finished projects away. We'll get all of our projects that we're going to do on camera ready. I will be back with you in just one moment. Okay. Got all my junk put away and I'm ready to get started. So let's walk through turning the machine on, getting it loaded, and then we'll start to add our different projects and we'll walk you through exactly how to do them. So if you remember from our last video, this is where the power button is on the machine. So we're going to turn that on. We're going to open the front cover. We're going to take out our low-tack adhesive mat. Again, when we remove the cover, you want to make sure to keep this cover, keep it on hand because it protects the mat. We're going to place our mat right in front here. We're going to hit the home key, and that's going to prompt us to hit the OK key so that the carriage can get itself in position. We're going to hold the mat up, and the reason I like to hold it up is because when you let it drag down, the mat's not sitting exactly flush. So although the manufacturer doesn't say that you need to do that, I like to hold this mat up a little bit, give it a little bit of support, kind of push it up to the rollers there. And that way when we push the feed button, it'll go in nice and smoothly, right? Okay, now you might notice that I'm putting the mat in what appears to be upside down, and what I want to show you is that it doesn't really matter. The mat can be fed from either of the short ends. So wherever there are arrows, you can put the mat in and load it, and it loads just fine. Okay, so our mat is ready to go, and we're going to pick our first item, and we're going to just place that right there and get it adhered. And you probably actually want to adhere this before you feed your mat in. In fact, why don't we do that? Feed this out. Let's get our item adhered real well. You want to make sure especially that this front leading edge is nice and tacked down so that it doesn't get caught up in the rollers. Okay, we've got it all ready to go. Now what I want to do with this is we are going to choose a pattern that already exists in the machine. Okay, and we're going to go in, pick some letters, and we're going to cut those out, and you'll see just how very, very simple that is. So we're going to go to the screen, and it says here pattern. And because we don't want to scan this in, we don't want it to scan that design in, we want to pick a pattern to cut out of this item. So we're going to pick pattern, and I want to do some letters. So I'm going to pick some letters, and I kind of like these, this little kind of little more serif font, and we're going to pick that, and we're going to say hello. So HELLO. And we're going to hit OK, and then it's going to show us that this is where these letters are positioned, and you'll notice we don't have any paper there. So if you remember from our previous video, we talked about how to position your letters, and we're going to do that next. But for right now, I want to make sure that we've got letters that are the size we want. These are set to be 5, and I think maybe we want to make them, let's go down to maybe, you can just hold it and go from there. I think we're going to go to 1 there. And then you can adjust the spacing, right? So if you wanted the spacing on these to be, let's say that you want to have a little more room between the letters because you are going to put something behind them and you need them to be spaced a certain width, then you can go in here and you can adjust the spacing. But we don't need that. We're just going to go ahead and leave the spacing as is. We're going to hit set. And now you can see that the letters are here. And what you'll notice is that they are over in this left corner where we don't have any paper. So we want to position them where our paper is. Now our paper is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows over and right up at the end. So what we need to do is we need to move this 7 rows over. So we're going to grab it and we're going to go over here and put it over on this side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we know that if it's anywhere within there and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that it will print out just fine. I'm going to put it up here because I'd like it to actually cut out of this corner here. And again, if you had a pattern on this paper that you were trying to make sure your letters were within or that you avoided it, then you can move this wherever you want. And again, the screen is a direct representation of what's on the mat, right? So you can make sure that you have it lined up exactly where you want it if you have a pattern that you're trying to cut into or to avoid. So now we're going to hit OK, and we don't want to draw it. We actually want to cut it. If you had a pen in there, you could draw it. And we're going to hit cut, and now you notice that our start stop button lit up. That means it's ready to go. We're going to hit start. And when it's finished cutting, it'll say finish cutting. You hit OK, and then you can hit your unload button and take your paper out. And let's see how we did here. So as you can see, it cut out our letters. Nice little hello. And this could be a really fun little card front, you know, and then put your wording down here. And then we've got our little letters that we can also use. And you can just pick them up with your hand, or you can use the spatula that comes with the machine. In the case where you've got really thin paper, I would suggest that you use your fingernails, or if you don't have any fingernails, maybe some tweezers. If you're using a thicker paper, pulling that off the mat, then it's pretty easy to do that with the spatula. But the spatula will get under there. It's just when you're using like copier paper, it's pretty thin. So here you can see our letters that we cut out. And again, we have our little cutout piece here. And again, you could put something behind this, or you could use it as a stencil. And one thing to note is that it did cut out the center of the O. So if we were going to put something behind this and we wanted to make sure that this looks like an O, we could put this little item back in there as the center of the O as well. So that's a very simple way to cut an existing pattern out of something that you have. So you're not scanning, I wasn't scanning the background paper in, I was just trying to cut something out of it. And you can do that with shapes or letters or words or whatever image happens to be on here, or if you load your own images in with a thumb drive, then you can do those as well. Let's get on to our second project. So again, I told you that this was a stamped image, again using the little yellow bicycle stamps, and we're just going to place this down here. Again, make sure that it's adhered nicely. Put our mat in, and before we start, you'll notice that we're still in the previous project and we don't need this anymore. So we're going to hit the home button, and it's going to say, is it okay to delete all the patterns? If you want to keep that hello, then you'll want to hit cancel, and you'll want to hit go back one more and then hit save. And when you hit save, you can either save it to the machine or to your thumb drive. We don't care to save it this time, so we're not going to do that. So we're going to go back and we're going to hit this, and we're going to say it's okay to delete those. Okay, so now we're no longer using an internal pattern. We're going to scan what we've got here, and then we're going to cut it out. So we're going to hit scan, and then we're going to hit direct cut. Okay, and it tells you that it's getting ready to pull the mat in, and you say okay, and make sure this is tacked down. Again, I'm going to lift up our mat. I'm going to push our load unload button. And our mat's getting a little dry probably. So now we're going to press the start stop button, and it's going to take our mat all the way through the machine, and it's going to scan that image in. Okay, so now you can see that we've got our image. It's right up here in this corner, and that's what we wanted. If it wasn't what we wanted, we could hit this back arrow key and scan it in again, but it looks fine. We're going to hit OK. So again, now you've got these bounding boxes that you can use to isolate this one item so that you can start to work with it. And although I didn't read this in the manual, what I have discovered is that when you hold the stylus to the screen, once it beeps, then the screen recognizes the connection, and then you can move. If you try to just grab it and move, it's a little frustrating. So again, touch the screen, and now you can drag up to where you want to enclose that item. Okay, again, touch the screen till it beeps, and we're going to select it. And now we've got it all selected, and what I would like to do is if I wanted to put a border around this, I could select this right here, and then I can select the size border just by using the up and down arrow keys, or the minus and plus keys. And then you can, that puts a nice little, like the heart that I did, that was the size I used. It was a 0.04. And we don't want to do any kind of borders, so we're going to hit OK. And I want to choose that I want it to just go around the outsides of the letters. Again, because two of these letters are not connected, I want it to go just around them. So I think we'll probably, let's just stick with it as is for now. So we're going to hit OK, and now it can either draw or cut. We want it to cut, so we're going to hit cut, and then we're going to hit start. Okay, and we're going to unload our paper. lift up, and what you'll see is that we ended up with this nice stencil of the letters. Cut it out very nicely, and again we're going to end up with 3 separate groups of letters here because the D and the R are connected and the A and the M are connected, so those are also going to stay connected. And then we have the E, and so we've got the D, R, E, A, M. Okay, so that's exactly how you do that. Very, very simple to do. And if you have a word that is all one word, that is all connected, then it would have just cut around those and that would have come off as one piece. Okay, so now we're going to go on to this little image, which was a hand-drawn image that I had done. And what I'm going to do on this one, we're going to try something I've not tried with this image, is I want it to cut around here, and I also want it to cut the inside here so that we end up with just the outline of the heart and the outline of the letters. I'm going to see how that works out. So we're going to again attach this to our mat. And again, we're going to go back to the beginning. We don't need that last image. We're going to put this in. We're going to load our paper. And then we're going to hit scan. But this time, we're going to say scan to cut data. And that enables us to make choices about how the cutting is done. So now we've got that, and it says that it's ready to go, and it's ready to be scanned first. Okay. And anytime that is lit up, that's your indication that it's what it's looking for. So the machine's thinking about it, it's processing the data. Okay, so now we've got our image and it's right here, and we have 3 choices for how it cuts out. The first button here is just the outline. The second button here is the outline. Let me make sure I've got that correct. That is the region detection, meaning that it's going to check just the region where the different lines are. The last one is line detection, and that means it's going to go and cut around all the lines. So let's try the last one, and as you can see, that's where we're at, and we want to again use the bounding boxes to scale this down to just what we want it to be focused on. So we're going to grab it when it beeps, drag it up, and then we're going to grab this one again when it beeps, drag it down, and that's what we want it to focus on. And we're going to hit save. We're going to save it to our machine, and it gives us a file name, in this case M00005, and you're going to hit OK. And you don't need to worry about remembering the file names, because when you go back into any of the saved data, what you're going to see are little thumbnail images of each item, and you'll be able to look and say, oh, that was the one I saved, because you can recognize the visuals on it. So don't worry about needing to save, you know, remember which file was which. If you want to keep notes, you can, but you don't have to, because you're going to get a visual representation, just like with your photos. It's just like a little thumbnail. So we're going to go back to home, and we're going to go to pattern, and we're going to go to save data, the machine, and we're going to see that our heart is this last item. Again, it's got the file number, but you can see that it's got this little thumbnail of it, and we're going to say OK, and then we're going to cut that out.
took off our tail that time. So one thing I do want to point out is that it knew exactly where to cut around these lines based on what I chose. So when we saved the file, when we saved that image file to our machine, it took the notes on it. So I had said I wanted it to use that last selection, which is the line detection choice, and it chose that and it saved that with that cut file, with that image. So if I wanted to cut it in a different way, I would need to scan it back in and then choose a different cut style. Okay, so just wanted to show you that. So kind of interesting the way this turned out. It definitely cut around all of these lines, so it detected the lines just as I hoped it would, and we ended up with just this little shell. Let's try this again. And this time, grab another piece of paper. This time we are going to use one of the other choices. And again, you'll note that I went out of the lines a little. I have this little curly Q, not quite as neat as my previous one, but it'll work for our demonstration purposes. Okay, it's okay to cancel all that. Okay, we're going to put our mat back in, and we're going to hit scan. Let's load our mat first. We're going to hit scan, ScanNCut, and hit start. And now we're going to get a whole new file. So we're not using the previous file. We're going to be scanning this in and getting a whole new file. And we're just going to make a different choice in terms of how this is going to get cut out. Okay, so we've got our file again, and this time we're going to use the second choice here, and that's the region detection. We're going to choose that one. Again, we're going to choose our bounding boxes and narrow down on our image. We're going to hit save. We're going to save it to our computer, to our machine. Now it's got file with it ends in 6, so sequential right after the other one. We're going to go back here. We can say OK. Go back here again. We can go to pattern. We hit save data. We go to our machine. We choose number 6. We hit OK and hit OK again. And now we want it to cut. And then now our light comes on and we're ready to cut again. Okay, let's unload our mat and see how we did this time. So this time it actually cut the whole thing out, including the little tail. And it looks like we got what we were looking for, which is not only did it cut around the letters, but it cut everything in the middle out, and it only left the lines. So this is a teeny line, and I'll have to be careful when I pull it apart. And if you use a little bit thicker marker, it would make this part a little bit easier. But as you can see, the machine doesn't have any problem detecting a very fine line and cutting around it. Alrighty. So what we're left with is this wonderful heart, and actually that was connected. I actually broke that when I was trying to take it out of the paper. And again, this is thin copier paper. It'd probably be a little bit easier to do if you had some pattern paper or cardstock. So I'm going to take this and lay it down. Let me get a piece of paper so you can see it. But it cut out this very, very fine detail drawing. So great idea if you're really into doodling and you want to cut some of your doodles out. What a great way to do that. Okay, so let's pull that project aside. And again, we're going to do the same kind of thing with this. And this time we're not going to use all of these stars. We're just going to select one or two of them to cut out. And we're going to delete our patterns. And we're going to scan to cut data. And we're going to load our mat in. And then we're going to hit start stop.
So what do you think so far? Pretty cool, right? So you're able to, with words and stamps and images, you're able to cut just around them. You're able to cut around them and then outline the lines inside, and then you're able to cut around them and then cut out all the inner portions but leave everything that is attached. So that's a pretty cool way to use it for lots and lots of different things. So even if you have some papers, let's say that you've got some papers like the Simple Stories papers I showed, you could use the second setting and you could scan that in, and then you could cut individual items out or cut words and letters out, and then also cut around them if you prefer to have that kind of a cut. So lots and lots of options. So now we've got our file and we can see it here, and what we want to do again is choose this second setting, and that's called region detection, and we're going to block out a few of these stars. I just want to use maybe two of them. See if we can do that. I've got them kind of close together here. Yeah. Let's go ahead and let it cut all of them, and then we'll just pull the two that we want to see. And again, we're going to hit save. We're going to choose our machine, and then it tells us we're now on number 7. So again, it's saving it numerically. We're going to hit the home button. OK to delete, yes, because we've already saved it to the machine. Going to go to pattern, save data, our machine, and we're going to choose the next page. Again, this is page 1 of 2 here and page 2 of 2. So we ran out of room here. We're going to go to our next page and choose our file. We're going to hit OK, and hit OK again. We're going to hit cut and start.
Now, one of the goals for cutting these out is I want to be able to see if it actually will cut where the lines are not connected. So on the star tips that were not connected, we're going to try to see what happens with those, just so I can give you an idea of when you have an image like that, if you draw it, whether or not that's going to work for cutting. finished cutting, yes. And we're going to unload our paper, and then we're going to lift up our paper, and as you can see, it did a great job cutting them out. And now we're going to lift each of these up. And what you'll find is you've got all these little pieces that it's cut out, and you just have to very delicately pull them out so you don't tear your star. And let's get this piece out of here. And it mostly only stays connected on the tips on this kind of an image. So, you know, more curvy images may be easier, but I think that it does a great job. So it did cut out our star very easily. And on the ones where it had an end like this, what you'll notice is that it did cut it, and it just cut that center part out. Right, so it just eliminated this center part, but it still does a good job even if you didn't connect all your letters. So we're going to grab our spatula and scrape up all our little bits and pieces here. We don't need to look at all of them, they're all the same. And one thing I want you to take a notice of is that you'll see that there's quite a few cut lines in this mat. And that is because when we started out, I was using thicker paper, and we had our blade on too, and now we've been using copier paper, and so the blade is going deeper into the mat. And in order to avoid that, you don't want to have all these cut lines. Hopefully you can see that. I don't know how clear it's going to be with this bright light, but hopefully you get a chance to see these little cut lines in here. And you definitely want to make sure that you're not cutting too deeply into your mat, because your mat's not going to last as long when you do that. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then we have our big flower, right? So our big flower is sort of our finale project for today. And we're going to place this down here. Just an example of what you can do with an existing pattern that we want to cut specific pieces out of. Okay, and again, go to our home page, hit OK, and we're going to load our paper. Make sure this is nice and tight on there. And now this is a thicker cardstock. So in this case, we would want to have the blade set on 2. And if it's real thick, you may even want to go to a 3. But I've found that with the papers that I've tested so far, a 2 is plenty. And again, if you're using just a thin copy paper or real thin pattern paper, then you want to set the blade on a 1 so that it's not cutting too deeply into your mat. Okay, so again, we're going to go to Scan. We're going to go to ScanCut data, and we're going to hit Start. And now it's just going to scan this pattern paper in. And this one may take a minute or so because it's got to process all the colors and the lines and things. One thing you'll notice about this image is that this has got a little bit thicker lines. So when you do get all your pieces out, they just sort of fall. When you pick the paper up off the mat, they just fall out. They're much easier to pull out than a real thin paper and an object with thin lines. Okay, we've got our image on the screen, and I'm going to choose this second one again, and I really want to narrow it down to just that flower. So I'm going to grab my bounding boxes, and I'm going to pull it up as close as I can to that flower. Now we've got some other patterns that are surrounding it, so it's going to be a little more challenging. And we're going to leave these off. So I did not select those in my bounding box. I brought the box right up to here. I brought it down to here, and then it's just above these. So we'll see how it does in recognizing that. We're going to hit Save. Again, save it to the computer. Should be number 8. Yes, it is. We hit OK, and then we're done with this. So yes, we can delete all the patterns. We're going to go to our saved data, to our machine, go to page 2, pick the flower, hit OK, and we're ready to go. We want to cut. Our light is lit. We want to turn it on. Now again, with this image, the goal was for it to trim around the image and then also the inside of the image. So unlike the previous one where I only took the insides out, this one should be trimming around the image and the inside. So we're going to be left with just the outline of the image in the paper, and then we're going to have the lines and then the separate pieces that are going to pop out that we can use then to create projects with. Okay, let's see how we did. We're going to hit OK. We're going to unload our paper, and we're going to lift our paper up, and it actually cut it in the same way. So again, I chose that I did not want it to cut these two, and it didn't. It recognized that I only wanted these items cut, and then what you're left with is all the pieces that make up that flower. So you could actually use these as a pattern. That would actually be a really neat thing, is to take these, and if you wanted to back this piece with another cardstock or with a photo, you could use these pieces as the pattern to cut. So you could lay these out exactly on top of your photo, and then you could cut it out, or you could take these off, place your photo right on here, and then scan it back in, and then you could use that saved cut file that you put into the machine, and it would know to cut this exact shape out of this exact spot, and then it would cut it out of your photo. So we may try to do that next and share that in our next video. That idea just came. See, the more you play with this, the more you're going to find really cool things you can do with this machine. So I will definitely try that out, and in our next video I will get back to you and let you know how it worked out. So one thing to think about is lines that are more than 1.5 millimeters will not be detected as lines. It's not going to see them as lines. It's going to think it's part of the pattern. So again, if it's 1.5 millimeters or larger, it's not going to detect it as a line. So I just wanted to bring that up, especially for those who may be using the machine set on millimeters. And I'll have to find out what that is exactly in inches, and let you know maybe on the next video, so that you understand that that's why it may not cut something out. So I think that is going to wrap it up for part 2 of our review video of the Brother ScanNCut. Just a reminder, some of the other things that it can do is you can edit patterns. So if you have patterns, you can feed those in and then edit seam allowances and things like that. So for quilting, that may be a really ideal solution for you. It can also weld shapes, images, and letters. So let's say that you had 2 of those hand-drawn hearts that I had and they weren't connected. You could actually scan that in, and you could take those as separate images, and then you could use them, weld them together. And that's something that we're going to cover in a future video. You could also do that with the existing patterns and the existing fonts. So you could go into the pattern section, you could find some images, you could overlay them, and then use the welding tools to connect those in the way that you want to have them connected. Let's see, draw with pens, right? Drawing with pens was another big one. And then just using the machine also as a scanner. Again, Brothers started as a office machine company, so they had printers and scanners and copiers. I've actually used them for a very long time, and I think they've always had really good quality products. And so this scanner does scan in at 300 dpi. So for those of you who have websites or blogs and you want to be able to scan in images and use it for that,
300 dpi is perfect for a blog. It's just perfect. It'll give you a really nice clean image, so you could use it to scan in some of your drawings or your doodles, or maybe you have a logo or fonts that you use for your business and you want to create something special with those. You could scan those in, or you could take them from your computer on a thumb drive, put them into the machine and save them to the machine, and then you'd be able to print those out and cut them out anytime that you wanted. So for instance, let's say that you wanted to create an applique on a shirt and you have a logo that is conducive to that. You could put your logo on a thumb drive, load it to the machine, and then scan it, print it out, and then cut it. And then be able to, again, you put the fabric onto the fabric contact sheets, you'd iron it on, and then you could applique that to a shirt. Be a really great thing for an event like CHA or maybe a craft fair, and lots and lots and lots of opportunities to use this machine in really fun and exciting ways. So hopefully you've gotten a really good taste of all the things this machine can do. We're really excited to be able to do the review for you, and I cannot wait to get back and play some more and then deliver some more really fun projects to you, and share some other successes and probably failures. That's part of the deal, right? You got to play with it and you got to try it out and see what does and doesn't work. And that's actually, for me, part of the joy is to get to see it do some things that I didn't think it could do. And we had a couple of those today. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. Please feel free to leave comments in the down below the video. And if you're reading this on our blog and you're reading the blog post, feel free to leave comments in the comment section. If you have a question and we don't have an answer, we will contact Brother and try to find out. Or if there's something specific you want to know if it can do, we're happy to give it a try and then let you know. And hopefully we can figure out how to make it happen. And if we can't, we'll call tech support and see if they can tell us if it's possible, and then we'll get back to you. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, there are associated blog posts that have a lot more information, including links to the Brothers site, links to the design team videos, links to where you can purchase the machine and purchase extra supplies, and then any other reviews that we do it in the future will also be linked. We'll try to link all of them together, so if you come in at any point in any of the videos or the blog posts, that you'll be able to go back and look at the other ones as well. And the goal really is that we will continue to use this machine and share things with you. So stay tuned for some fun Valentine's projects. Thanks so much for joining us again today. We hope to see you back on our blog or on Facebook, Pinterest, or Twitter, and we'll provide all of the links down in the show notes. Again, that's right down there, and we'd be happy to have you come and engage with us and our other community members anytime. Have a great night. Bye-bye.